Chief Meteorologist Tom Coomes here, and I want to put into perspective the devastating rainfall and flooding in eastern Kentucky. And it really brought me back to, well, August 2016 when we had our 6 to 10 inches of rain, and then February 2018 when we had our record river flooding. Those were two separate events. Well, this is just one event in eastern Kentucky that seemed like combined, where they had that 6 to 10 inches of rain and then the rivers rapidly rising and just causing devastation. Look at this. This is Whitesburg, Kentucky, where the streets have been turned to rivers. And if you know eastern Kentucky, this is moving into Appalachia. So you have rolling hills and narrow valleys. And those valleys pretty much turn into gutters for all this rain, and this is what happens to the town. The crest of the North Fork of the Kentucky River was over 20 feet. Now that crest is relative, but the previous record was 14 feet. This crest was 6 feet higher than the previous record. And I brought up Google Maps to just see, what does the Kentucky River do through town? And it just meanders and winds its way through. A hospital right in the middle of town, in an oxbow of the river. Again, this is a lot of devastation, a lot of infrastructure right in the path of that flooding, and that town wasn't alone. Nearby county, Breathitt County, Kentucky, over 6 inches of rainfall in 6 hours' time. That gives you a measure of how rapidly the rain came down, and those rivers, they were peaking in the early morning when many people were still asleep. That's why people were washed away. This kind of event we call training. It's just round after round of thunderstorms. This is along a stationary front between the very hot air and the milder air we're seeing across the region. And it just rained and rained. And you can see the bullseye in eastern Kentucky from Hazard on towards Jenkins along the Kentucky, Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia area where the hardest hit rainfall was. Change in rainfall intensity across the country has only been increasing in many locations. What this means, since 1970, when it rains, it's just raining a whole lot more, an increase of 20, 30, 40% nationwide. With the warming climate, we are seeing more intense rain events. We've seen them here in Michiana. We've seen them this week in St. Louis. In fact, when we covered the St. Louis flood event, I said I expect to see these more and more. I didn't think I'd be saying it 2 days later, but that's a real reality. And there are towns in this country and areas of this country where people live very close to some rivers that we may not be able to rebuild. It's something we're going to have to really think about how we live next to rivers, where are those threat zones, and how do we retreat smartly, because heavy rain events like this are more likely to happen.